The Immaculate Conception teaches that the Most Blessed Virgin Mary, in the first instance of her conception, by a singular grace and privilege granted by God, in view of the merits of Jesus Christ, was preserved free from all stain of original sin. That means, in addition to Jesus Christ, Mary was free from original sin. It's sometimes hard to believe how in human history one decision, one sin can affect so many people. I mean, how could the sin of Adam and Eve have such consequences for all of humanity? After all, it was their decision, not mine. Why would that have any impact on me? It's a great question. And it's interesting because recent studies have shown by geneticists and evolutionary biologists that trauma can be so intense in someone's life that it affects us in our DNA, in our genetic makeup. We see that biologically. A mother who is dependent on drugs or even alcohol can transfer that same addiction to her child without he or she having ever decided to do the drug or the alcohol. It just shows that our decisions have impacts and consequences beyond us. God's decision was to have a rescue plan in place. Having just commemorated the horrible events at Pearl Harbor just a few days ago, I'm reminded of the June 6, 1944 invasion of Europe, D-Day. And there's this great scene in any movie or any book. You imagine the general addressing the army, the airborne troopers and Air Force pilots who are about to take this great mission to Europe, and he's delivering this speech, instructions on what ought to happen and what the plan is for the salvation of Europe, if you will. I feel like Mary's grace in the Immaculate Conception is kind of that first step of the rescue plan. Jesus was to be born, but Mary was to conceive him. And so in order for him to be born, Mary also had to experience the unique privilege and grace of being without sin. This is how she was born, free from the interior temptation to sin. Knowing this, we may be tempted to think that Mary didn't have to struggle the way that we did, because she wasn't interiorly tempted by sin. She didn't have the attraction to sin like we do. We'd be right in thinking that her struggles were not the same as ours. In fact, they were much greater for that very fact. You see, the same devil that tempted Eve into disobeying God also worked terribly hard at tempting the new Eve, Mary, to fall. She was that much more susceptible to the temptations, sensitive to what the evil one was doing in her life. It made things so clear for her. When the devil works in our lives through temptations, we don't see that in many cases, and we easily give in often. Mary saw as clear as day, and the temptations became so terribly difficult. We who oftentimes so easily give in to temptation can't understand what it must have felt like to have the weight of the power of the evil one bearing down on you day and night, tempting her to sin. Yet Mary, by yielding to the fullness of God's grace, was able to resist this terrible power of the evil one and follow God completely. Friends, one of the greatest lessons of this feast is the reminder that everything we love about Mary is not for her own sake, nor was it of her own doing. She was able to do what she did not because of her own strength, but by the grace of God to which she gave herself completely. It was God's grace who worked through her. And that's the key, to give yourself to God, to let Him take charge, to give Him the center place in your heart and in your life. And that's what the Blessed Mother shows us so spectacularly. Friends, every moment of the day is a new opportunity for us to imitate Mary's excellent example. She dedicated her life to saying yes to everything that God asked of her, no matter what it was, no matter how difficult it was. Only saints get to heaven. So we need to dedicate ourselves to following the path to holiness. And that means giving a simple, humble yes to every opportunity provided by God so that we may become more like Christ. For Mary, it all began with a yes. For us too, it begins and continues with a yes. How often do we say yes to God?